Well, we'll bring in our special guest, Dr. Murat Aslan, who is a senior lecturer in security studies at Hasan Kalyoncu University. Dr. Murat, how would you define the characteristics of this war so far?
Well, the initial characteristic that we can easily observe is the brutality and merciless of the actors towards civilians, because there was an indiscriminate targeting process of Assad regime, and later then especially Russia's and Iranians' involvement in this war, somehow deepened this process. And later then we witnessed the involvement of the United States of America, and his especially alliance with the terror groups deepened and widened the conflict, as you know. And the second issue that we can easily observe is that we can easily witness the emergence of new actors, especially in conflicts of such type. And Daesh, for instance, is one of the most prominent actors that we can easily observe in this picture.
Okay, so you talked about the emergence of new players there, and you mentioned Daesh. Now, Daesh have been largely defeated, yet the war hasn't really wound down. Yeah. It's kind of still escalating. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the decisive point is Assad's withdrawal from the reign, because Assad is the initial actor who started this campaign against the civilian protesters. And let me remind you the, saying of the youngsters that were arrested in 2011. They had written on a wall that, people will topple down the regime. And still, this slogan is valid. That means Free Syrian Army and opposing elements is determined to topple down the regime again. So there is no change from the initial, point of view.
Okay, so you mentioned there, you sort of talked about Daesh, but then you also talked about that popular mobilisation of people.
Yeah.
In those early stages of the war, was there even any sectarian element to the protest or the unrest, do you think?
Well, I don't believe that, because at the initial stage, especially during the first 3 or 4 months, there was no sectarian division in the protesters. But as far as Free Syrian Army was built and Assad somehow enjoyed the support of Hezbollah and Iran, there was a process of polarization in Syria. And later then we see that this polarization, took Syria to, in a deep creek that both parties could not compromise.
We've seen round and round of peace talks, and yet they've yielded very little positive results. Is it even realistic at this point that there could be a peaceful political settlement, or are we more likely to just descend into a more violent, more escalatory proxy war?
Well, it depends on. First of all, intentions of the actors are very important, because if Russia continues to support Assad within a mood of like this manner, that means situation will escalate. But what I believe is that Free Syrian Army and opposition as a whole will somehow try to compromise if Assad steps back. So the decisive point is if Assad will sacrifice his interests in favor of the majority of the population. And the end state of such a compromise, as you know, in Sochi and Genoa, is free election. That means if they can hold a free election, that means there will be a chance. But it's a long process. We have to wait,
It's not looking very likely at the moment, though, is it? A free election down the road?
Yeah. I do not know. I mean, it may be, but there must be a huge process of, building a ceasefire, later than building institutions, and later than we must have foreign actors, especially terror groups and the United States, step back from the scene, or especially be silent. Because if there are many actors in Syria, everybody will have an interest, not only for Syria, but for the whole Middle East.
Right, so you point out those actors there, Russia, Syria, Russia, Iran, etc. They're really the key part, and they need to get out before there can be any kind of peaceful resolution.
I don't expect that, especially in the short run. But rather than opposing groups and Assad regime, I think, first of all, the big powers, great powers, should talk to each other. I mean, on what they want in the region. because Syria appeared to be a stage for building a kind of regime that can address their interests in the whole area, including Mediterranean and also the wider Middle East. So great powers should talk to each other first.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Murat Aslan from the University of Hasan Kalyoncu. Thank you very much for your time and your insight.
Thank you.